Hello, NEA Aspiring Educators Caucus. My name is Princess Moss. I'm an elementary music teacher from Louisa County, Virginia, and I am seeking your support in my bid for re-election as your NEA Vice President. Thank you for the opportunity to share some thoughts. Your first question is, aspiring and early career BIPOC educators are not being recruited and retained at the same rate as their white colleagues. Under your leadership, what will NEA do to change this? It is essential that we create a steady flow of students to be the next generation of educators, and one that is reflective of the diverse demographic makeup of the students served. Once hired, we must ensure that those educators are also retained. Your question is, under my leadership, what will NEA do to address this? First of all, we need to ensure that we are growing the nationwide pool of BIPOC candidates coming into the profession. There are ways that NEA can be instrumental. We must advocate for preparation programs that provide an equitable pathway to teaching to increase recruitment of BIPOC educators. We must develop partnerships with our HBCUs and our HSIs. There is so much potential in this area. We have been working to this degree in some regards, but we still have great opportunity to broaden as well as ramp up our efforts. We also need to be more intentional about grow your own and apprenticeship programs. Such programs like the Teacher Cadet program in North Carolina is an example of a grow your own program. And even in my own state, at my own alma mater, the University of Mary Washington in Fredericksburg, Virginia, we are working with the surrounding school districts to engage middle and high school students, and especially students of color, to go into the profession. I will use my bully pulpit to call out the need and push for recognition and training in implicit bias. It is often the biases of hiring teams and school administration that determine whether or not a candidate is successful in the interview process as well as at the work site. And I believe that institutional partnerships with school districts will help with placement and supports for BIPOC educators. I experienced that in my early years of teaching with the partnership between the University of Virginia and my local association. NEA will continue to advocate for a positive and inclusive school climate and culture. Your second question is, what plans do you have to address the intersection of AI and education in relation to curriculum and lesson planning, plagiarism and academic dishonesty, preparing an AI-ready workforce, NEA's organizational systems and staffing, and algorithm bias? There is a lot to unpack in this question. Indeed, NEA needs to be on top of the rapid development of artificial intelligence and how it impacts public education in our organization. It is also important to note that AI is still in its infancy, and the implications have a lot of unknown variables. For example, ChatGPT was launched November 30, 2022, less than 6 months ago. The concerns regarding curriculum and lesson planning, plagiarism and academic dishonesty are not new and remain a center stage discussion point for many of our educators. AI technologies like ChatGPT can be viewed as an opportunity, but also could impact teaching and learning negatively, which creates an interesting dynamic, much like a polarity. But to be clear, to be very clear, academic dishonesty and plagiarism have no place in our profession. My plans to address the intersection of AI and education is to make sure that we are keeping up with the research, And as a matter of fact, NEA needs to do its own research as well as work with our constituencies, including our aspiring educators and higher ed community, to determine how to effectively address the polarity of AI technologies. Be assured that the NEA enterprise will continue to focus its energies on increasing the pipeline of educators who are prepared to embrace the challenges and opportunities accompanying the profession, no matter what form those challenges and opportunities come in. Your third question: the professional landscape and the qualifications it demands are rapidly changing, contributing to a rising cost of college, a wave of underemployment, and a growing demand for blue-collar workers. How will you direct NEA to respond to the shifting demand in the professional workforce? While the shifting landscape predated the pandemic, it has been exacerbated by the pandemic. As for the growing demand for blue-collar workers, the tight labor market won't last forever, but the retirement of baby boomers and other longer-term demographic factors are creating a gap between manual labor job demand and workers available to hire for them. So the goal would be to be proactive to get ahead of the job force trends and close the gap. As we work to close the gap, there are some things that we can do. We can lift up the education profession. We have to ensure that we are working to attract and retain those who are worthy of our babies. We need to continue to address the rising cost of college. We need to put the pressure on around public service loan forgiveness. We should also advocate for robust investment in secondary career and tech ed programs in our public schools. No matter whether a person is blue collar or white collar, they need to be trained. And lastly, I'll remind everyone that elections matter. Your fourth question: this year, a handful of state legislatures introduced bills to pay student teachers. What do you think are the major barriers that aspiring educators currently face? If elected, how will you use your position in the NEA to address these barriers? The cost of an undergraduate degree has increased exponentially over the last several years, and it is a barrier for many aspiring educators, especially our BIPOC candidates. The fees that come with praxis testing, EdTPA, background checks, as well as with fingerprinting and state certification, are also barriers. And this is one of the many reasons why I will continue to fight for college affordability, student loan forgiveness, and defraying of costs. And I will use my office as a bully pulpit to address these issues. Payment in some form is appropriate, whether it's actually a salary or grants or scholarships or stipends that may come from myriad sources to help offset the cost of teacher preparation and student teaching. I think it's most appropriate. This is something that I would like to discuss with our legislative committee to see what the opportunities might be with federal legislation of some sort. And the fifth question and final question: how do current evaluation and assessment practices for aspiring educators seeking teacher certification, such as EdTPA, impact those from marginalized communities? Evaluations and assessment practices should not function as a single source indicator of one's readiness to be in a classroom. Standardized, one-size-made-for-all evaluations and assessment practices do not accurately measure anything. In fact, the practices are racially biased and are barriers to entering the profession, especially for students from marginalized communities. First of all, there's the cost. The cost of these tests, such as EdTPA, is prohibited. Then there's the actual test. The nuanced practices necessary for working with culturally and linguistically diverse students cannot be fully assessed by distant observers using a standardized rubric, nor are credential candidates' attributes such as kindness, promotion of racial and social justice, the ability to think on one's feet, or the ability to adjust teaching to the demands of the moment assessed or accessible by tests such as the EdTPA or Praxis. We have to be intentional about addressing racial and social justice and equity to eliminate bias in any form and implement policies that promote a racially, culturally responsive, and inclusive atmosphere. Again, thank you for the opportunity to share some of my thoughts with you.